good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time zone you're in. Welcome back to Sip and Talk.
I'm Sunny, everyone's good friend.
You really are. So, Sip and Talkers, welcome back. I'm Joe. Before we jump into our deep dive today, I have got to share this comment that someone dropped in our feed last week. It was just, an absolute thought bomb.
Oh yeah, I saw that one. It really kind of stops you in your tracks.
Exactly. It totally reframed how I look at my phone. So I have it right here.
Let me actually read. I have it pulled up too. It says, if you want to talk about brainwashing, think about who invented marketing and advertising. Hint, it definitely wasn't the communists.
Which is just a wild way to start a comment.
Right. And then they go on to point out this absolute flood of what they call death porn on social media, especially since the Ukraine war started. They were arguing that this constant exposure is just collectively numbing us, like totally dehumanizing us.
I swear I almost spit out my oat milk tea when I read that. But honestly, this is exactly why we started Sip and Talk. Yeah, we don't just want to nod along with whatever the popular consensus is on things.
Right. We want to rip the labels off the things we just take for granted every day and see what's actually operating underneath.
Because deep skepticism is, well, it's basically a survival skill right now. In this hyper-connected era we live in, the most terrifying brainwashing doesn't come from some authoritarian dictator shouting orders through a loudspeaker.
No, it's way more subtle than that.
Exactly. It comes from the seemingly personalized recommendations, the lifestyle branding, and, yeah, that raw violence that gets fed to us by our phone algorithms every single day.
So that brings us to our mission for today's deep dive. Who owns your mind? From propaganda to modern death porn.
We are skipping the political correctness today.
We really are. We're going to figure out who is secretly shaping our thoughts. Is it century-old ad men, or is it these mysterious modern engineers? So Sip and Talkers, get your brains ready, because we're jumping right in.
To really tackle that listener's provocative question, I think we have to start at the historical root of psychological manipulation.
Like looking at the uncomfortable similarities between selling a product and selling an ideology.
Exactly. And the listener is historically accurate. Modern advertising as this massive structured industry was basically born during the early 20th century capitalist expansion in the U.S.
Right, and you really can't talk about the birth of modern marketing without talking about Edward Bernays.
Oh, absolutely not. Bernays is widely considered the father of modern public relations. But the craziest part about him, the key to understanding his whole genius, is that he was actually Sigmund Freud's nephew.
Wait, like this psychoanalysis guy? Freud?
Literally his nephew.
Oh, wow, okay. So he took all of that heavy clinical psychology about repressed desires and just, applied it to selling stuff?
That is the exact mechanism he used. In 1928, Bernays published this foundational book, and he literally titled it Propaganda.
Just right out in the open?
Right out in the open. He took his uncle's theories about the human subconscious, all those hidden desires, the need for status, the fear of rejection, and he just applied them to mass psychology.
That's wild.
His massive breakthrough was realizing that you shouldn't sell things based on rational, functional needs. You sell them by appealing directly to those deep subconscious desires.
Okay, let me ground this in reality for a second, because I fall for this constantly.
Oh, we all do.
Seriously, I'll be scrolling, right, and I'll see an ad for a pair of sneakers. Now, my rational brain knows I absolutely do not need a 10th pair of sneakers.
But the ad isn't selling you rubber and leather.
Exactly. It's beautifully lit, the music is perfectly curated, and the person wearing them looks incredibly cool, unbothered, and just effortlessly happy.
They're selling a vibe.
Yeah. The mechanics of the ad completely bypass my logic and basically whisper, hey, if you buy these, your life will finally feel complete. You'll be part of this exclusive tribe.
That is the perfect example. You're buying an identity. You're buying a feeling of belonging. That is Bernays' legacy in a nutshell.
But how does that connect to the darker stuff, the propaganda?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to look at how commercial marketing and authoritarian propaganda actually share the exact same toolkit.
The same toolkit?
Yeah, they both operate as psychological hackers.
Okay, I see the connection, but let's break down the specific tools. Like, how exactly are they hacking us?
The primary mechanism is emotional manipulation. They trigger primal states, fear, desire, tribal identity. And doing that completely bypasses the prefrontal cortex, which is the logical part of your brain.
So they turn off the rational filter.
Exactly. Then they both utilize the mere exposure effect.
Which is just repetition, right? Like seeing a billboard 50 times.
It's more than just repetition, though. It's a biological hack.
What do you mean?
The human brain is naturally lazy. It uses shortcuts to save energy. When it encounters a new idea, it has to burn glucose to evaluate whether it's true or not.
Oh, so thinking actually takes physical energy.
Right. But if the brain sees that same message or image 50 times, the neural pathway gets paved. The brain just stops evaluating it and accepts it as a baseline fact because familiarity feels safe.
Wow.
And finally, they both rely heavily on social proof. That's the engineered illusion that everyone else believes this, so you must be crazy if you don't.
It's honestly unsettling when you lay out the mechanics like that, and historical records totally back this up. Both the Soviets and the Nazis actively studied these exact American advertising techniques and just weaponized them.
They absolutely did. They took the playbook and ran with it.
But I have to push back on this a little bit on behalf of our listener.
Sure, go for it.
If they both use the exact same psychological hacks, the emotional triggers, the mere exposure effect, the social proof, aren't we just splitting hairs about what to call it?
That's a fair question.
Like, if the marketing is perfectly engineered to target my subconscious, do I really have free will in that moment when I click buy? Or is it all just brainwashing?
It's a phenomenal question. But the distinction lies in the environment, and that distinction is crucial. Commercial marketing relies entirely on the illusion of choice.
Okay, illusion of choice.
The ultimate goal is to make you want something so badly you think it's your own idea. But at the end of the day, you can always choose not to buy those sneakers.
True. I can just close the app and keep my money in my pocket.
Right. You might feel a fleeting sense of missing out, but the cost of your dissent is incredibly low. No one is going to knock down your door for wearing your old shoes.
Yeah, I'm not going to jail over New Balances.
Exactly. Authoritarian propaganda, however, relies on an absolute information monopoly and the threat of severe physical punishment.
The stakes are completely different.
Completely. The goal isn't just to make you want something. The goal is to short-circuit your ability to think independently and force you to obey. In that system, the cost of dissent is your freedom or your life.
Wow.
So, while the listener is incredibly perceptive that the psychological techniques are identical, calling an advertisement brainwashing kind of dilutes the horrific reality of what happens when the state holds a weapon to your head while playing the commercial.
Right. The stakes dictate the definition. But that actually leads perfectly into something else. If marketing gives us the illusion of choice, what happens when that exact same illusion and those exact same attention-harvesting mechanics are applied to something we can't control?
Like global warfare.
Exactly. This brings us to the second half of our listener's comment, where the algorithm's desire for our attention collides with actual human violence.
We are entering truly uncharted territory here.
We're talking about death porn.
Yeah.
And just to be perfectly clear to everyone listening, we are not talking about literal pornography.
No, not at all.
We are talking about the transformation of real death, actual war, and visceral violence into a consumable, gamified digital spectacle.
Yes. And if you dive into recent investigative reports like the ones in the New York Times and The Economist, they outline how platforms, specifically places like Telegram and X, have become these massive clearinghouses for uncensored, unfiltered combat footage.
It is entirely surreal. I mean, think about your daily routine. You can be standing in line for a coffee, right? You casually unlock your phone, and suddenly you are watching high-definition drone executions.
Are they the palm of your hand?
You are seeing literal explosions and casualties in real time. And the craziest part is, it's sandwiched right between a video of a golden retriever and an ad for a new mattress.
The juxtaposition is insane.
When I see that stuff, there's this intense cognitive dissonance. I'm horrified, but my thumb is paralyzed. The user interface of the ad is so smooth and frictionless, it tricks my brain into categorizing a real human dying the exact same way it categorizes a guy doing a skateboard trick. It all just becomes content.
That cognitive dissonance you're describing, that is the mechanism for the first major psychological fallout, which is desensitization.
Desensitization.
Yeah. Human beings have a natural evolutionary aversion to witnessing pain. But when you are exposed to it constantly in a scrollable, frictionless format, your brain adapts to protect itself.
So it just shuts down.
Essentially, your baseline threshold for empathy literally rises. It takes more and more extreme imagery to make you feel anything at all.
Which totally accelerates the dehumanization.
Absolutely.
When you watch a grainy drone video from a mile in the air, the enemy soldiers on the ground lose all their humanity. The interface strips away the fact that they have families or favorite foods or fears. They just become dropping pixels on a screen.
Precisely. You don't see humans anymore.
It honestly feels like we're living in a modern digital coliseum.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Think about ancient Rome. The citizens would sit in the stands, eat snacks, and idly watch gladiators slaughter each other for entertainment. The only difference is now we do it from our couches while sipping our morning coffee.
Yeah, the blood sport just moved to our screens.
But here's what I don't understand, and maybe you can clarify this. Is this a deliberate cognitive warfare tactic by these nations? Or is it just the algorithms blindly feeding our darkest human morbidities simply because it gets clicks?
It's a terrifying symbiosis of both, actually.
So they're working together?
Well, state actors and military groups absolutely distribute this footage deliberately. It's a calculated move to demoralize the enemy, project power, and rally their own base.
That makes sense from a military standpoint.
But the platform algorithms don't care about geopolitics. The math only knows one thing. Shocking, violent content causes a spike in your heart rate.
And a spiked heart rate means what for the app?
It means it keeps your eyes on the screen milliseconds longer than a picture of a sunset. So the algorithm amplifies the violence purely to maximize your behavioral data.
Wow. And what does that constant amplification do to us as a society?
It creates profound empathy fatigue. The lines between physical reality and digital gaming become completely blurred. Psychologists are documenting that this chronic exposure operates very similarly to indirect PTSD.
Indirect PTSD from scrolling.
Yeah. On a macro level, it subtly shifts our societal baseline. It leads to a subconscious acceptance of violence as a legitimate, everyday way to solve problems.
That is so dark. But it makes sense. Think about the last time you opened your phone just to check the weather, and 45 minutes later you were furious, emotionally exhausted, and arguing about a conflict happening 3,000 miles away.
We've all been there.
That wasn't an accident. That was the machinery working perfectly, which means we need to zoom out and look at the invisible architecture enabling all of this. Because this is no longer just a debate about democracy versus authoritarianism. It is a crisis of tech platforms merging with our deepest human weaknesses.
To understand that architecture, we really have to talk about surveillance capitalism.
Yes, that's the term coined by Harvard professor Shoshana Zuboff, right?
Exactly.
I was actually reading Zuboff's work on this, and the part that blew my mind was the concept of behavioral surplus.
Yeah.
She basically treats our digital exhaust the way oil barons treated crude oil. Explain how they extract that.
It's a great comparison. In the industrial age, companies mined the earth. Today, tech platforms mine your life.
Every single interaction.
Every time you click, every time you scroll past an ad, or, crucially, every time you linger on a post for just a fraction of a second, you produce behavioral surplus. It is the digital exhaust of your existence.
Let's walk through the exact mechanism of that, because I think people underestimate it. If I pause on a video of a street fight for, say, 2 seconds longer than a cooking video,
the algorithm registers that millisecond pause. You didn't like it, you didn't comment, but the math knows it captured your attention.
It knows I looked.
It takes that tiny digital footprint, combines it with millions of others, and builds an incredibly precise psychological profile of you. And then they use that profile to exercise what Zuboff calls instrumentarian power.
Instrumentarian power, that sounds intense.
It sounds like sci-fi, but it's happening. They aren't forcing you to do anything. Instead, they gently nudge your reality. Tomorrow, your feed is 10% more aggressive.
And the next day?
The next day, it's heavily focused on geopolitical conflict. It slowly shapes your baseline perception of the world without you ever actively choosing to see it.
It's basically traditional media theory, but weaponized on a massive scale.
Oh, totally.
Like agenda setting. The old rule was, the media doesn't tell you what to think, but it tells you what to think about.
Exactly. If the algorithm's nudges result in you seeing 50 videos of urban crime in 1 week, you are going to genuinely believe crime is skyrocketing, regardless of what the actual national statistics say.
Your reality is dictated by your feed.
Precisely.
And it feeds perfectly into the spiral of silence. This mechanism is so insidious to me. The theory says that if you hold a minority opinion, you are terrified of social isolation, so you just stay quiet.
Right. Nobody wants to be the outcast.
But on social media, the algorithm can take a fringe, extreme opinion and amplify it so aggressively that it looks like a massive consensus. So moderate, reasonable people just stop talking out of fear.
Which, of course, makes the extreme voices look even louder.
It's a vicious cycle.
And that dynamic is accelerating at a terrifying pace. If we look at the most cutting-edge data from 2025 and 2026, there are these comprehensive reports from MIT and MDPI They highlight a phenomenon called cognitive offloading.
Cognitive offloading, so outsourcing our brains.
Basically, we are literally outsourcing our critical thinking to AI and recommendation systems.
Yeah.
Instead of evaluating complex information, we just ask a chatbot for the summary, or we let the feed dictate what matters.
What does the data actually say about the impact of that? Like, how bad is it?
It is staggering. Recent studies show that 78% of youth accept AI-generated content completely blindly.
Wait, hold on, 78%?
Nearly 80%.
That is massive. Let's take a step back, though. How do we even measure blind acceptance? Like, are they really not questioning it, or are they just too exhausted and lazy to Google it themselves?
That's a great point.
Because there's a massive difference between being deeply brainwashed and just taking the path of least resistance because you're tired after a long day.
That is the critical nuance right there. It usually does start as exhaustion.
Yeah.
We are so overwhelmed by information, so we take the shortcut.
Makes sense?
But over time, taking that shortcut fundamentally weakens the neural pathways responsible for critical analysis. It's literally like a muscle atrophy.
Use it or lose it.
Exactly. A 2026 World Economic Forum report specifically warned about this, calling it weaponized emotion. Because the algorithms favor outrage to keep you engaged, they are systematically eroding baseline social trust.
So we're being trained by convenience to view our neighbors as enemies.
Exactly right.
So if we synthesize all of this, we are basically fighting a war on 3 distinct fronts. Let me try to map this out for everyone listening.
Should go right.
Okay, layer 1 is the physical layer. This is the hardware in your hand, the infinite scroll, the pull to refresh that perfectly mimics the mechanics of a casino slot machine. It is physically engineered to hijack your dopamine.
Yes, the slot machine effect is very real, and that feeds directly into layer 2, which is the logical layer.
The math.
Right, the invisible math. The algorithms that sort your feed, creating massive, impenetrable echo chambers, filtering out nuance, and systematically narrowing your perspective of the world.
Which ultimately results in layer 3, the psychological layer.
The fallout.
Yeah, the behavioral nudging. The empathy fatigue from the death porn, the cognitive offloading to AI. It is the slow, steady erosion of your independent consciousness.
When you stack those 3 layers on top of each other, you have the most sophisticated, pervasive architecture of mind control in human history.
Which brings me to a question I think everyone listening is asking right now.
Let's hear it.
It feels like we are playing chess against a supercomputer, but the computer also gets to control the lighting in the room, the chair where you're sitting in, and the music playing in the background.
That's exactly what it feels like.
It's not just beating our logic, it's exhausting all of our senses. So is critical thinking even a fair fight anymore? Are we just bringing a knife to an algorithmic gunfight?
It is an asymmetric war. There's no denying that. The platforms have supercomputers and thousands of PhDs working around the clock to capture your attention.
And I just have a cup of coffee and a dream.
You just have your prefrontal cortex. But realizing that you are in a fight is the very first step to leveling the playing field.
Awareness is key.
Once you understand the mechanics, once you actually see the strings, it becomes infinitely harder for them to treat you like a puppet. Pausing before you scroll. Questioning why a certain video is making your heart race, that is how you reclaim your cognitive sovereignty.
Sip&Talkers, this has been an incredibly deep conversation, but so vital for navigating the modern world. And as always, we want to put a warm, clear disclaimer right here at the end.
Yes, very important.
Sip&Talk is not here to criticize or discriminate against any specific country, any group, or any political ideology. Our goal is simply to present objective facts, look at these massive technological shifts from a global perspective, and uphold our core values, which are critical and independent thinking.
We just want to lay out the board so you can see the pieces.
Exactly. Oh, and just in case anyone was wondering, even if we use terms today that sound like investment jargon, like surplus or capital, this is strictly a sociological discussion. Absolutely no financial advice here.
Keep your money in your wallet and keep your thoughts in your own head.
I love that. Now, to wrap up our mission for today's deep dive, I want to leave you with a final, somewhat chilling realization to mull over.
Lay it on us.
We started this conversation talking about a listener's comment on propaganda and brainwashing. But think about this. The most successful, absolute brainwashing in the modern world doesn't force you to surrender your mind at gunpoint.
No, it doesn't need to.
It doesn't use secret police or physical threats. Instead, it offers you so much frictionless convenience, so much personalized entertainment, and so much effortless validation that you voluntarily hand over the keys to your consciousness.
It is the ultimate magic trick, making you believe the cage is actually a throne.
Such a powerful way to put it. Well, that is all the time we have for today. If you enjoyed this conversation, please hit that subscribe button for Sip&Talk wherever you are listening right now. We really need you with us in the fight for independent thought.
And before we go, we also want to give a big friendly shout out to our old buddy Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickey to Life.
Yes, you absolutely have to check him out. He has a bunch of brand new travel vlogs and various short and long videos up right now.
Lots of great stuff.
Honestly, I'm joking, but I'm also serious. He has become surprisingly hardworking lately. It is great content, so go show him some love at Mickey to Life.
Keep questioning everything and take care of yourselves out there.
See you next time we take a deep dive.